Welcome to the Starting Over Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and this is a show where we look at the strategies and tactics behind the game of heroclix. I'm recording this on Thanksgiving and possibly another day, so it's probably going to sound weird. It's a composite of thoughts and ideas, so bear with me if the volume is a little disjointed. So, getting ready to go to Thanksgiving dinner, but there's something that came up, and it's been discussed quite a bit lately, and so I wanted to tackle it, and it's this: should Unimind be banned in Rock Limited? And I'm going to come back with a very controversial response to this. And my answer is no. Now, some of you might be saying, hold up, wait, Dark Logos. Why? This piece is overpowered. It does so many things. Why are you not for a ban on it? So, let's go into it. First off, I believe right now there's a potential virus that's about to sink into the rock player's mindset. And the virus is this: if the best of the best can't figure it out, then I can't. If the best of the best can't figure it out, then I can't. And I think that's foolish. I think that we have started to idolize the content creators and put them in a pedestal that says if they can't figure it out, we can't because we're too stupid. And I think that's bad. That's first of all my first argument against that. And I'm saying this being friends with most of them. Okay. The second thing from a community perspective is those outside of this community that tackle this issue on a local level, so they're not necessarily spreading their findings, have a distinct advantage when it comes to Worlds. Just being used to being in the pressure cooker and dealing with these ideas. The last thing is, if there's truly an unlimited amount of problems with Unimind being in the format, having that being displayed constantly and constant public pressure on WizKids will make them reevaluate how they do game design. Okay? And this is the key thing. While we could say WizKids doesn't watch Rock, we know that enough Rock people talk about WizKids' product. And all you have to do is start hitting them where it hurts and hitting them on social media, hitting them on Facebook, and blowing them up on Twitter. And I think that's the one thing in particular that we haven't done from an organizational standpoint. And I think that's sort of foolish. But at the other end, Rock has rules built into it that makes running Unimind at a full point value a bad proposition. But let's start breaking down why Unimind at 300 point limited is not as bad as Unimind in standard and 300 point modern. When we look at Unimind and how he's played, the first thing that we notice is this: he's played at between 160 and 165 in 300 point modern, and he's played with ID cards, preferably a round table. If not, he's played with Supreme Intelligence. Okay, the ID cards allow him to get around everything that can cause him a problem in 300 point modern. And that's really the bigger point, is that he's able to stat bump and just make whoever he calls in stupid good, regardless of whatever else is going on. If you take away the backup from Unimind has to play distinctively differently. Not only that, he doesn't have a solution for 80% of his problems from ID cards. So we shift those out. Okay, so we can automatically see that even if you did something like 160 point Unimind and 140 point Jakeem, and you could pump up Jakeem Thunder and then have Unimind attack or whatever else, you would still have some problems. Even if you have Pog guys or even low point attackers, even if you were able to have a swarm of them, take the Lokis, for example, and you were pumping them up so that they could do a lot of damage, that would still be nothing close than what he has, currently in Modern, and you're also investing a lot more points. So the moment that you go in and you bring in that Loki, you don't have much else to work with. Definitely if you're trying to get, 2 extra, Loki, common Loki drones or God of Trickery Lokis. Okay. So we can see distinctly that there are some good characters that you can bring in at like 100 something points, but the amount of backup and additional things that are also on the field can cause problems for a 160 to 165 point Unimind player. So the next thing that comes up is when we start looking at full point Unimind, and a lot of people will say, like, look, hey, Dark Logos, full point Unimind comes in, can't die, 2 stop clicks, well, not full point Unimind, the 275 point Unimind, can't die. He picks up Symbiote, now he has shape change, and he's ridiculous. I can't deal with him. I mean, you could do the Symbiote and be down some of your Eternals, or you have full on, I think 5 Eternals. You could do that. Whatever you want to do. Let's just say he goes with 4, and then finds a 5-point piece of equipment to use. Okay. I would say automatically, right there are 3 distinct things that pop up as immediate flaws to this concept of playing Unimind. Number 1, barrier teams just annoy him. There's no way for him to beat barrier teams. You can't hypersonic speed and bust down a wall anymore. And because of that, he can't bust down a wall and then get into the hole and then just sort of stay there. He won't have access to sidestep in most cases. And so what is he going to do? You have a distinct problem. Let me rephrase that. He does have access to sidestep. So he has to bust down a wall, then sidestep into the hole, and then pray not to have all of his stuff just taken away. That's just bad. That's expecting way too much. You can run double or triple barrier, and he can't do anything, and now you're forced to a double loss. Unimind. That's the first thing that I love, is it forces to a double loss, and I'll explain why this is good in a little bit. Next up, 2 Uniminds of high point cost face each other. They refuse to engage each other or can't kill each other, so they both lose. It's a double loss. Why is this good? This means that this tactic, in rock format only, has a distinct disadvantage, is that it leads the meta to be more defensive, causing for more preliminary 0-0 losses. Thus, it encourages people to run solutions that can kill Unimind or discourage Unimind from being played in the meta. Pure and simple. Now, yes, you can have 2 Unimind players slug it out, and potentially one can eventually get through all of the silliness and jank. It is possible. Okay, I really want to make that clear. It is possible for one Unimind to get the other Unimind down if, the one Unimind fails to, heal off their stop click, or couldn't heal off their stop click properly. So there's a bunch of things to consider just right there. Okay, the next thing that we can look at is Unimind has problems dealing with characters with stop clicks. So playing two characters that are reasonable points with stop clicks pretty much just screws Unimind. It really does. Yes, there is a gamble that, again, the characters with stop click also need to have regen and be able to regen back off of their stop click. But if they do regen off of their stop click, Unimind has to push to put them back on their stop click. And then, the opposing character has the option to clear, and then Unimind has to clear, and then they can try to regen and heal to get back off the stop clicks. Like the cycle just starts all over again. And again, you can potentially force Unimind into a double loss situation. Okay, so I know some of you might be saying, like, all right, I don't see why this is beneficial, because all you're saying is that you're forcing Unimind into a double loss situation in preliminaries. That hurts me, Dark Logos, as well. Yeah, it does. But what it does for the culture in general, it shows, is that, hey, if we make our own environment, and in this case, we make our own hell. You can play Unimind, and that's fine. And there's no judgment against you for playing Unimind. I'm definitely one that's not going to cast shade on anyone playing Unimind. But understand that it has risks. Understand it has risks. And that you can be a Unimind player and go through your preliminaries and have 2 losses out of 4 rounds or 5 rounds because you couldn't kill another Unimind. And this is where it gets exponentially more silly. If a Unimind player plays a defensive build round 1 that's not a Unimind build, and neither team can kill each other, then going into the second round, that Unimind build has a higher chance of facing another defensive build or another Unimind that failed to get points. Now, a Unimind build that does get points, and I am talking about full point Unimind right now, that does get points through whatever means, whether it's, they sacrificed, some of the Eternals for an object, whatever. That build, if they, go out and win, then they're going to be playing, more than likely, a team designed to kill a Unimind team. Okay? Or a defensive team that was able to get over on a Unimind that failed to get his regen or his still energies off. Alright, so what does all of this mean? It means that there are tactics out there, but what it has to do from our community standpoint is we have to see how Unimind can be punished. And right now, most people have given up on figuring out how to punish Unimind because they too could possibly lose. And this is where I look at where people misevaluate good game state. HeroClix builders 7 years ago, about 7 years ago, would say, I can't play a team unless my win percentage is like 99%. Okay, and that's why you got Metron Nightcrawler. That's why you got Ghost Rider and Heroes for Hire. Okay, is because the team had to be 99%. Okay. When we got to a degree of diversification with the Lantern batteries and the power plant and the Bat Belt and a few other things out there, we were then able to say, no team can be 99%. I need to at least be 80%. And then 10%, I have a 50% matchup against them, and then the other 10% is an auto loss. Okay, that still narrows the game down by a lot. Because again, we saw Green Lantern Power Battery, Orange Lantern Power Battery, Nighthawk Prime, Banshee. A lot of these characters we keep seeing over and over and over again. Okay. Now, when all that stuff goes away and we have fewer options, we also have seen some of our diversity go down since we have fewer options and resources. But one of the key things that we have seen is once a team is at least proven, we believe even though it may or may not be true, that team can take on everything, like back to that 99%. And I think that's a flaw. That's a huge flaw. Definitely considering Rocktober and how that Unimind build from Rocktober, or the Unimind builds from Rocktober, are not being abandoned, but moved away from and adapted. Jakeem builds that we were looking at Rocktober have been moved away and adapted. Heck, even, the first round draft of Kenny Pena's Mistress Death build is being evaluated and redrafted. And that's fine, and that's great. And I think that's one of the key things that we have to look at is how are we going to keep pushing things forward. Now, I'm going to present some team concepts, some skeleton frameworks for us to look at, and then proceed to start to say like, can we really deal with this as an idea, or can we deal with this as a concept worth working around? Okay, so one of the first things that I thought of is Beta Ray build, and Beta Ray build causes a lot of problems to Unimind. Number one, it forces Unimind to have to forego his range advantage and have to actually get up in there and attack people. So you're able to combine all sorts of various elements with him. If you're also able to put in a character that can't be one-shotted or can't be dealt a lot of damage due to invincible, you have a really good combination, or a really good partner to work with Beta Ray Bill. The other thing I think is great with Beta Ray Bill is that you can incorporate anybody with Flurry with Beta Ray Bill, and when you do, you're now able to potentially get past the stop click, and I think that's one thing that's great. Also, duo attack. Duo attack also helps you get past the stop click, and unfortunately we only have 2 characters with duo attack right now. But again, Beta Ray Bill forces Unimind to come in close. Now, I know a lot of folks will say, but the Mjolnir, Unimind teams don't really run Mjolnir. Now, if we do have a Unimind team that runs Mjolnir, then we have force and adaption. And now there's points on the board, and you can, let's just say you run Jakeem and Unimind. You can easily just TK out Bill. Bill runs up, grabs the hammer, and is gung-hoing it back to Jakeem. Okay, you can easily do that. It's something that I think most people wouldn't have really thought of previously, but now there's points that you're holding that your opponent has to come and get. Okay, and if they fail to retrieve, that piece of equipment plus equip it, all you have to do is just chuck it at them in a ranged attack, and you score 10 points. That's it. That's all you have to do, and then you just have to survive for the rest of the game. So you can see, objects open up a weakness for Unimind, for full point Unimind. So going back, if you have Beta Ray Bill I think is really great. I think Beta Ray Bill plus Jakeem Thunder with Mjolnir is a really good combination. And like I said before, we're not seeing Mjolnir outside of Mistress Death teams, and even then, you're able to use Jakeem to cover for Bill. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about. That you can pick stealth with Jakeem and then have Bill behind Jakeem, and now Mistress Death can't get any targets off. So that's something to think about. But mainly Flurry with Mjolnir with Jakeem I think is a really good idea. It allows you to do a lot. I really do mean it, a lot. And it puts pressure on your opponent by saying look, I can charge Flurry you from 8 away, and really just mess things up. The next figure we're going to talk about is Mistress Death. And one thing that I think with Mistress Death that it's already being shown is that she has the ability with Mjolnir. Now, I'm going to say that specifically. With Mjolnir to provide a threat to a Unimind. The other sort of counter problem that comes in is that she needs fodder. Now, in Limited, we have a bunch more problems. So, first off, the Loki trick won't work. Loki's is probably like the worst thing that you can do in the matchup. So there is that. The other option that comes in is you can start looking at Tyrannus. Tyrannus, I feel, is probably one of the bigger characters that's going to provide you constant fodder that can die so that you can get tokens off of Mistress Death. That would also be useful. And now, I want to say Squirrel Girl and I want to say the pink one. But the problem with those Pogs is that they're tiny. And since they're tiny, you can just shoot right over them. They don't provide any level of protection. And that's what you need. You need some level of protection to actually make it so that Unimind has to waste actions and grind through those Pogs. But when we look at Mistress Death, there's a couple of key components that we can come to and see like, hey, this is legit. Number one is pretty much the doubling of damage dealt once she lands that hit. The second element is that she's going to be a permanent fixture on the field just about most of the game. So that's another good element to be mindful of. I think the last thing that we have to look at with Mistress Death is when she starts taking those tokens off, she has the potential to functionally just keep going. And then not only that, she can still pulse wave. She doesn't have to just keep doing melee attacks. She just needs to land the first melee attack. And from that point on, with a 12 attack and shape change, she can just pulse wave. And I think that is something that a lot of people have underestimated with her. And so I think we can look at Mistress Death as a legit threat to a full point Unimind, because a full point Unimind still won't be able to get its stat pumps up. So you're talking about a 12 on an 18 needing a 6. So that's a big deal. Okay, so now we're back asking ourselves some other questions, which is like, if I have Mistress Death, do I need TK? TK would be a good idea. Is there any TK that's as survivable as Mistress Death? And I'm like, unfortunately, the only TK that's even close to that is Element Man. And I know I just threw everybody for a loop when I said Element Man. But go over to World's Finest, because I think that's where he is at. I know he is... It's an uncommon, I thought. And this is where it's like, I remember this character, and now, oh nope, he's a rare. Okay, I was right. He was in World's Finest, but he's a rare. Okay, so let's look at Element Man real fast. Metamorphic Element Man can use Plasticity, Shape Change, and Giant Reach. So he already has Super Senses. So now he has Super Senses and Shape Change. When he has no action, Element Man can use Phasing Teleport. And he also has Sidestep. Periodic Arsenal give Element Man a free action and choose a standard attack and or defense power. So he can pick TK. So it's still going to be really hard. Plus, he has outsiders, which allows you to just go up to pretty much any character on your team, or even go up to Unimind and just be like, "Look, man, you don't have all your stat mods now." And so that's another element that we'll go and expand in on that. And I think that this is something that we can actually expand a little bit. Is that when we start looking at the perplex situation, and since we now know that Unimind does not have access to ID cards and a bunch of other fodder, when we're talking about full point Unimind, low point Unimind still doesn't have access to ID cards, but he might have a little bit of fodder with him. All of a sudden, having an outsiders or two is not a bad idea. And of course, we still have Coriander. And definitely, like I said, when we're looking at full point Unimind, putting an outsiders on Unimind really does limit down his damage output. And so now you have Coriander, who's a rather deep character. And what you've now said is, hey, look, Unimind, you're going to have to go through this deep character if you want to try to stop the stat modifications, and know that like once you hit her, she has the ability to retaliate back with a running shot pulse wave and 3 damage. So that is a legit problem. Now we also have Black Lightning, but I really don't think most people are going to be using Black Lightning. The 120 point Batman is a little bit expensive. I know a lot of people unfortunately would not like that. I love Technocrat, and Technocrat coming in at 80 points also is a good attacker and can put in a lot of damage onto Unimind. While at the time, once Outsiders is applied, Unimind has to put in 2 attacks to kill Technocrat. We also have Looker, which again, Looker can take 2 attacks from... Looker could take 2 attacks from Unimind, both her normal version and her prime, but I wouldn't recommend her prime in the current situation. Now, Katana, I really can't recommend Katana over Technocrat. Like, I really would have to say, like, go with her. There's also Grace, but Grace I feel is a losing bet, because it's almost saying, like, I can go and be more physical than to Unimind with charge than he can with hypersonic speed, and that's not true whatsoever. Geoforce, same situation, just bad deal. So it puts us back really looking at Element Man, who is going to give us the most utility. There's 25-point Nightwing and also 50-point Nightwing from the World's Finest Fast Forces that's going to give us, again, some utility, but not coming in that steep of a price point. Technocrat that's actually giving us damage, and then Coriander. So, going back around, what are we seeing? We're seeing that we have to think that we don't have the luxury of maybe picking an indoor map if we're going to try to run Outsiders. So we're going to need to make sure that we need to make sure that we're able to get line of fire. Maybe we need to start looking at theme teams again to make sure that if we pick one of these characters that we can get a very long range of line of fire onto a Unimind. Now, at this point, you're probably going to say, well, now, Dark Logos, you're going to talk about Nighthawk Prime. Hardy har har, right? No, not really. And let me go in and why I'm going to say I'm not really going to talk about Nighthawk Prime that much. Number one, it's obvious. Number two, in the limited format, against other matchups, I feel like he just doesn't offer as much. And last but not least, when we're looking at moving forward and tackling this problem and looking at solutions, if Nighthawk Prime was significant enough, most people wouldn't even be talking about banning Unimind. And let's just realistically say it. If having no stat modifications for your opponent was good enough, then everybody would have said, like, oh yeah, him having his perplexes is a non-issue. When in reality, Unimind could just come back and be like, yeah, I lower all your attacks to -3. And that can be just as big of a problem as anything else. So, let's go on, and I'm going to sort of present a skeleton team that I feel is really good and actually performed really well. And it can deal with Unimind at full points. It really can't deal with Unimind if it comes in at like 160 to 165 because you have enough backup to actually seriously do something. But let's look at this team or the skeleton of it, and you'll see what happens. All right, so it's pretty much 3 super rare Green Lanterns from Joker's Wild and D20 Doctor Strange. And you can fill in whatever mystical characters you want for the rest of the points. Or I would prefer that you wouldn't run objects because that just opens you up for point snatching. But pretty much all you do the entire time is stay near your starting area or in the back corner and hope to roll yellow. Now, I know some of you would say, Dark Logos, what is that realistically going to do? Can you kill Unimind that way? You're going to have to roll yellow a lot. And I'm like, well, yeah, you do. But at the other end, the Unimind player also has to make another decision, and that decision is, am I going to try to just run and sit here, or understand that it's going to be a 0-0 loss, and there's nothing I can do about it? Now, I know some of you would say is like, that's a bad prospect. So what would be the alternative? And realistically, the only alternative in my mind is if you were able to pack it all up and move out carrying a couple of GLs and some sort of attacker that ignores characters and just start firing. Now, that would be a little bit more difficult to pull off, but the structure is there. It's something that you could work with if you don't want to use the Doctor Strange. Now, I would also say that you may not need like 3 GLs, but 3 GLs make sure that the job is always done, and that if need be, you can put up 3 free walls of blocking, or 3 free walls that can allow you to be very reasonably protected on most maps. So it's another thought on how do I deal with Unimind, at least force him to take actions that he doesn't really want to take, and in particularly, caging Unimind inside of 4 squares of barrier puts him at a very distinct disadvantage. So there's another idea for you to work with and to start to unpack. If we go into, I think, the Harley Quinn set, there was something that I think, here we go. I think it's the Prime 43B Harley Quinn, Fear of Madness, Perplex, but only to modify combat values by -1. When Harley Quinn uses it, choose close or range. Unless it's the only character on an opponent's force, the target can't make that kind of attack until your next turn. Actually, so no. This is only good for low point Unimind versus high point Unimind. So, never mind. I knew she had something that was unique with her. I just could not remember. Also, okay, here we go. There's also another character I just realized that generates standard size characters. Even though I don't like her point cost, it's Queen Bee, and she generates flying pogs. So they fly, have Blaze Claws, Fangs, 15 defense, and 1 damage, which is primarily good if you're looking at carrying characters around. So you can technically just generate little mini taxis. Now again, the mobility is not that great, but it's alright. It'll get you from point A to point B. That's all that matters. But the fact that she has to take a power action, she doesn't have willpower or Indomitable to create her bee drones. That's a little crappy, but well, it's not a little crappy. It's a lot crappy, but that's another idea of a character that is full points. Sorry, that can bring out full size pogs, but on command, not just through some weird game effect or whatever else. All right, so what have we looked at so far? Because I could keep going on and on and on about different options or different ways of tackling it. And I know one thing that I could really spend a good amount of time on is tackling Unimind with other tent poles. There's tons of other tent poles that you can use to fight back against Unimind and make sure that he's just having a bad day. And here's what I'll do. I'll list off my top 3 for dealing with Unimind, and let me do something real quick. I think because I wanted to make sure, because I'm not sure if he's still legal anymore. Okay, no, that's not what I'm looking for. Okay, so he didn't show up on my list. All right, so let's sort of start off with full 225 point Beta Ray Bill. And I know a lot of you are like, what? What do you mean Beta Ray Bill at 225 and he could take on Unimind? Remember, he has a stop click. Beta Ray Bill has a stop click, and Unimind has to get close to fight Beta Ray Bill. So Beta Ray Bill is not in a position where he's always going to get the first strike, but once Unimind hits him, he's pretty much putting him in a position where he can just be like, oh yeah, all right, cool, now I'm going to whack you back. And you can still run some decent backup with Beta Ray Bill if you wanted to. You're not forced to. The next one, and I know some people might find this a little bit interesting, is 15th anniversary Cosmic Spider-Man, and you put in you give him Thunderstrike. Now, for most of you, I probably just said blasphemy, and you would be like, well, you could give him Thunderstrike, or you can also give him Loki Scepter. Loki Scepter is also another good option for you to utilize. It will give you full dial shape change. You wouldn't have to worry about losing that character. Losing your shape change. And you get mind control too. And I know that's mainly more useful for other matchups that aren't Unimind. But Unimind has to work really, really hard to try to kill Cosmic Spider-Man once he has either Loki Scepter or Thunderstrike. Because again, how is Unimind going to stop Cosmic Spider-Man from knocking him back? He has to pick Charge. If he's picking Charge, he's not picking Hypersonic Speed. So I take that back. He's picking Hypersonic Speed on his turn, and then Charge on his opponent's turn, which again means like he's not picking Invincible. He's not picking Super Senses. He's not picking Shape Change. because he wants to make sure that Cosmic Spider-Man does not heal up due to the knockback effect. So there are a bunch of different elements that are there. Then add in the pulse wave, and Cosmic Spider-Man. The Unimind player isn't paying attention, and they have like Invincible or whatever else. The pulse wave goes off, and bam, you get knocked back. You're going to heal up one. So there's that. Of course, there's Goblin King. There's tons of things that we can do with Goblin King. And I know some people will say, like, but we're low on points. We're not fully at the cap once we add this equipment. And that's fine. You don't have to be. You just need to be able to maneuver and just say to the Unimind player, in particular with Goblin King can be like, look, I can charge flurry you, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can try to hypersonic speed and run from me, but I can just constantly just sidestep and regen and get closer and closer until, or just running shot and taking these various shots on you and various attacks on you to whittle you down, and then I can just flurry you. Flurry, steal energy, or flurry and flurry, steal energy, or regen and sidestep. You can pick, flurry and invincible. There's tons of things that you can do as a full point Goblin King to just punish your opponent. So even if you get perplexed down, you're like, all right, cool. Your perplex isn't protected from pulse wave. I'm going to pick pulse wave and perplex. Let's just say you're on a prop click, so you already have prop, and I'm going to perplex up my attack, pulse wave you. Your perplexes go away, and now I'm a 12 attack on 18, needing a 6. So Goblin King is definitely up there as a really, really solid option to deal with Unimind. Where is he? I'm hesitant. I don't think Batman God of Knowledge is good enough, or Lex Luthor God of Apocalypse. I don't think they have enough to carry. They unfortunately don't. And even BVS number 16 Superman, the hell is here. He doesn't have enough to actually do something against Unimind. Now, I am going to bring up a figure, and I know some of you are going to be like, "Wow, really? Like, are you serious about this?" And I actually am, and I think that it has a lot more potential than we would actually give it credit for. Well, there's two characters I think that we actually are probably better than we would actually give it credit for. The first one is full 300 points, World's Finest. And I know some of you are like, what? Like, yeah, full 300 points, World's Finest. Now, what is our main problem? Our main problem is that we have to get past stop clicks, and we have to be able, to provide a unparalleled amount of offense. And so at 300 points, because they come in at 200 and then also 300. At 200, I don't really like their point value, but at 300 points, they do a lot. One of the first things that happens is you can hypersonic in, make your first attack hit very hard. Either by because never mind, you can't use a super strength there. I forgot about that. It used to be a lot harder of a hit, but okay, never mind. I'm looking at the wrong character. I'm like, hold up, wait, that special power isn't there. But anyway, so you have hypersonic speed, 12 attack, 5 damage, 19 invincible. So what it means is that no matter how hard or how big of an attack that World's Finest gets hit with, they're only taking 3. Not only that, they can't have their stats lowered. So Unimind can't perplex down their attack or their damage or their defense because they're immune to that. They have a ton of move and attack, and you're primarily just waiting to set up for a situation where your opponent is within your range, and you just duo attack them. That's it. You just duo attack them, and by duo attacking, you're throwing down more damage than your opponent can actually deal with, than Unimind can actually deal with over time. So even if it's a slug 1-to-1, and even if there's some steel energies that go off, the fact that you can just be knocked right back down to that stop click, and with one failed impervious roll, you're past that stop click. There's nothing more you can do to get past that. I think that World's Finest could be an interesting threat. Now, I know some of you would say, but Dark Logos, how is that beating these other teams? And this is my sort of response. Again, if the common knowledge that's being spouted by us as professionals, and I'm including myself in this, is that full point Unimind is the freaking unstoppable truth, and that everybody, quote unquote, is going to play it, then that means over half your field is going to be Unimind. So then that's it. That's the fight and the matchup that you have to deal with. If you go against someone else, then you might be in a 50-50 situation. And the reason why that seems uncomfortable, just being honest, is that that's not the preferable game. But since we have chosen a side, i.e. Unimind is the new God King and has dethroned Jakeem in his variety, then we can come back and say, like, all right, look, if I face somebody that's not playing Unimind, then that at max, I have a 50-50 chance of encountering one of those. Then I have to employ my skill. If my skill in my team can't overcome my opponent's skill in their team, then that's it could be just a balanced game. Okay. Now, could it be that my opponent has 18 different moving parts and is going to out-action me in every turn? Possibly. But if they have that, are they just going to lose to Uniminds anyway? And then the answer is maybe, depending on how it's built. So if you have a team that, has all these actions and does all this stuff, and it loses to Unimind, then guess what? You're still going to have the same problem. Is if you encounter that team might be able to hurt you, but that team isn't going anywhere. So all you have to do is realistically just win 1 or 2, and then you're bound to hit a Unimind. But this is the problem, and this is again where I sort of draw the line at. People think that adaptions don't happen quickly and swiftly. Adaptions do happen. The problem comes in is that some teams are more advanced than the person piloting the team. And it sounds insulting with me saying that way, but it's true. There are some teams that are better than the people that are playing it. And because a top level person is not playing that team, the results of that team might be inconsistent. So it's a lot easier for people who've already qualified for events to take risks in other events because they don't have anything else to gain. But when you start like looking at the fine details of those people that are like, I'm going to try to make my mark on the game, and I'm coming for the throne. Watch out, Paris. Watch out, Easton. Watch out, PJ. I'm coming. I got my team. I come from, the central part of Tennessee, representing, wherever central part of Tennessee is. I don't know. Okay. They came straight out of there. Okay, they made some next level Star Trek Deep Space Nine type technology. Okay, and they're on a NASA program budget. Okay, that ain't going to work. That straight is not going to work. Or at the other end is, they made some Deep Space Nine tech, but they up there trying to run it with a pilot from the Cold War era. Like, no, you can't do that. I got tachyon particle fields. I got force fields. I got, warp factor 9. I got all sorts of great jank. And you can't even comprehend the concepts of what this is capable of. Okay. So, right then and there, we can see that because of adaptions in the game and people being competent or incompetent, certain responses come about. Now, people that go in and study the results and stuff, they can say, like, look, this team, really when we're saying, like, this top team, usually we can say is this. This is a top team because a person of an average skill level can play this team and excel. Then there's teams where this is a top team because a person of average skill can do well, but a person of above average skill will be guaranteed to be in top 4. Or there are teams that are like, hey, this team requires an above average skill level, and played by a below average pilot, it just tanks the team, and they're not going to break. Play by average player, they might break. Play by above average player, they're going to be in finals. So that's why when we constantly hear, like, that's a PJ team, that's an Easton Brock team, that's a Goku team. Okay, that's us sort of making excuses for ourselves intellectually. But also, it's us saying that the technicality of the team is high. Okay, so anyway, just going back, I hope I've given you a case, or at least a starting point of saying, like, look, Unimind at full points can be tackled. The problem comes in is that now we have a risk. And if Unimind is unaddressed, I think it's the best for Rock. The main reason is, if everyone gravitates to Unimind, there will be enough 0-0 roll-offs to make people reconsider it. There will be enough 0-0 roll-offs to make people reconsider it. Okay? Then, once that happens, then we can start actively looking at, well, if the meta is, 0-0s, then how are points being scored? And then we can actually, present a solid case to WizKids. Now, WizKids will be like, the game's intended to be played with ID cards and resources and relics and blah, 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 blah. And that's what their legitimate argument can be, because it is a non-WizKids identified format. But when all of the glitz and glam is taken off and you're dealt with core mechanics and core figures, it really does show a big weakness in WizKids. And from a game design perspective, in them moving everything unknowingly to a hyper aggressive build in one format and then to a super defensive meta in a reaction to it. So that's something else that I think is very interesting. But anyway, I'm going to leave with this one concept, and I want you all to, I wouldn't say embrace this concept because I'm setting up to sound hypocritical, but I want you to employ this concept for the next few months and start looking at new and unique ideas right now. And that is this. The old philosophies of dealing with teams and building teams is not adequate enough to solve our current problems. So our old ways of looking at teams and building teams, all those philosophies are not adequate to solve our current problems. And the main reason I say that is, again, if most of the top thinkers believe and agree that Unimind should be banned from Rock Play for limited, and they are the foundations of our technological society, then it's their thought process isn't sufficient enough to solve the problem. So now we have to start questioning, hey, do I, just because I run a one-man team, am I going to be out action? Well, if a one-man team faces a one-man team, then we're in action parity. So then I'm not going to be out action. If a one-man team faces a two-man team, I may or may not be out action depending on the role of the second figure. If a one-man team faces a barrier team, am I going to be out action? Yes, but does the barriers team's actions matter? Can the barrier team be aggressive? Can the barrier team get off all those attacks in the turn without risking their defense? So what we're starting to see is where we had our classic principles, and those principles are statements, those principles need to go back to questions. And I think that would give us the tech mindset to move forward. Also, just bringing this up as well, something that I think a lot of us haven't thought about, Mitzelplick. And I'm bringing up Mitzelplick not necessarily as a, oh, look, I take clicks of damage type thing, because he doesn't do that anymore. But Mitzelplick from the perspective of, hey, look at me, I can lock down this character while you do blank. So I think Mitzelplick might be a really good character that will bring forth like a change from an offense perspective. So yeah, I mean that's just the the little side thought. If you're and if you're still going to be playing heroclix classically, which is, oh look, I'm going to shoot with range. Oh look, I'm going to have these powers. I'm going to do a ton of damage. Oh look, I'm going to have tons of perplex and prob and all the other stuff. I'm not discouraging you from doing that, but be mindful when to adapt, when to let some things go and cross into the unknown country. So, yeah. All right. I'll tell you all this. I will only cover Star Trek if I get like 50 comments by 50 different people on this video saying to cover Star Trek, because I don't want to cover Star Trek. I don't wanna. And not only that, there's tribbles. So freaking tribbles are OP. And yeah, so get a bunch of tribbles. All right, that's it for today's episode. You can follow me on Twitter at StartOverPod. It came from outer space and told me, man, you need to get off that Steam. Get off Steam, Dark Logos. You're spending too much money on Black Friday deals. Yeah, I need to get off Steam. I need to get off Steam. I bought a bunch of games, and I know I'm gonna probably just be playing XCOM, the new expansion for XCOM. If anybody's played Dragon Glory, let me know. It's a free-to-play game. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just letting you all know. I just want to know if anybody else has played it and like, is it good? But yeah. Also, brief side note. George Massey's article about how to stay sharp in the off season on Majestic CCG. Really good article. Shout out to George Masu. I would also tell you my little side training for off season. Read books about how humanity works, whether physiology or psychology, and even our spirituality. Get a root on what angle you're going to tackle during the off time. Next thing is, like, for games that I play to keep my decision making sharp, XCOM. XCOM Enemy Unknown or Enemy Within, both and XCOM 2. Great for decision making. I don't play Iron Man mainly because I like going back and figuring out like a better route. But if you do play Iron Man, it helps you deal with consequence. I've had a couple of games where I've just accepted that, characters die. So, that's a thing. You can play like classic XCOM, the UFO defense. I think that's the first one. But that one is hard, insanely hard. And you need to have a guide to help you understand what you need to do to beat that game. It's so hard. It's it's a murder simulator. You just watch your crew die. Speaking of watching your crew die, FTL is another game that it will help you with decision making and making quick decisions, but also trying to judge the actions of your opponents, because some of the actions that you can be faced in the game seem obvious and some of them aren't obvious. Last but not least, I like fighting games, and mainly because fighting games help you focus on a style and developing a style of play. And if you can't develop a style of play in heroclix, that might be something that you want to personally start to look at, because if not, you'll forever be a meta slave to whoever you love to listen to on the internet or you find as an authority in heroclix. I sort of hope that you all see me as hey, this is advice among other people giving advice, instead of this is Dark Logos, the one and only giver of truth of heroclix on the internet, because I know I've been wrong. Anyway, you can email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com, and that's startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. If you wish to opine, keep it piffy, keep it interesting, keep it awesome, baby. Yeah, let me know what you think of Harley Quinn, because from what I hear, most people aren't buying it. And that's what happens when you make crap. Sorry to say that, WizKids. And you can go to the blog, startingoverpodcast.blogspot.com, and you can donate to the show. Everything that you donate will be used to make the show better. And head over to the TeePublic site and get a shirt, because nothing says Christmas than a Phoenix Nest hoodie. Yeah, or a Starting Over podcast shirt. Feel the heroclix joy. Alright, that's it. Thank you for listening. And remember, we all have to start over sometime.